time grief we go, gotta learn to let it go.
Welcome to Wake the F Up podcast, where we talk about living consciously and helping people uncover their essential selves so that they can stop sleepwalking through life. Welcome back to Wake the F Up podcast, a space where we speak truth into healing, love into loss, and power into pain. I'm your host, Alix, and today's episode is one that beautifully blends the mystical with the deeply human. We're welcoming someone who walks in two worlds between the spiritual and the everyday, with humor, humility, and heart. Natashia Mack is a small town reverend, an international evidential psychic medium, and the voice behind the Hot Mess Medium podcast. She calls herself the Hot Mess Medium, not just because she's a self proclaimed ADHD mom of four, but because she honors the messiness of being human, highly sensitive, quirky, intuitive, and the miracle of being able to speak to those who have passed. Natashia offers something sacred, peace, presence, and possibility to those walking through grief. She is a vessel for the personalities and healing messages of our loved one in spirit, helping others find not just connection beyond the veil, but also trust in their own intuitive knowing. This is going to be a tender, insightful, and maybe even a little magical conversation. Natashia, welcome so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here. And can I just say that's like the most beautiful intro I've ever heard in my life. And
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. I feel like the intros are crucial. Like, I think it's nice to connect our two paths and to highlight all the hard work that you're doing out there. I think as a griever, as a widow, in the early days of grief, I was really seeking for answers beyond this realm of and I think the question for my children too still comes up a lot. Where do you think dad went when he died? Or do you think that there's a heaven? Do you think there's an afterlife? And of course, none of us have these answers concretely. So it's really beautiful work that you're doing. And I think it can really lend itself in a time where you're just seeking some answers, especially, when people die young, as my husband did. It's hard. It's really hard. So, talk to us a little bit about yourself and your journey to become or discover that you were having this connection and became a medium.
yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So, where to even begin? I suppose I I know it's quite the journey I've been on, but I've been highly sensitive my whole life, extremely empathic. I grew up being very telepathic with animals as well as other people as well, and could feel emotions and pains that weren't mine, and I just felt very, very deeply. I don't know if you can relate to that. I'm sure a lot of people,
Mhm.
maybe your listeners, can relate to that. Um, and I kind of just grew up feeling like I was just sort of floating through life, and but also having these super deep emotions that I didn't understand, didn't know what to do with, right? Oftentimes,
Mhm.
when you feel so deeply, you don't know what to do with them. So oftentimes you disassociate or kind of check out or whatever. Um, I would say a really pivotal moment was becoming a teen mom at 17, and that just kind of changed the trajectory of my life. And that kind of gave me a new sense of belonging here and just a new sense of purpose. And I definitely believe my daughter saved my life because I
Mhm.
wasn't I wasn't on a good path before that. And my husband and I, we ended up getting married and having three more children.
Mm.
So we have four, and we're still going strong, which is a huge blessing. But I didn't know about my abilities until after we got married, which is so he didn't know what he was signing up for.
Yeah.
Um,
I think all husbands may feel that way in some degree, right? You're like, gotcha now.
yeah, like, too late.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So basically, what's interesting is like I'm equally, if not more intuitive than I am a medium, but I didn't know I was until I discovered I was a medium. And usually it's the other way around for people. But I would say after the birth of my fourth child, that's kind of what initiated me into this next level of highly sensitivity. I mean, like I would go out in public and my mind would go completely blank around
Mm.
certain people after having these, like, just certain conversations. We're having a deep conversation or whatever. And my mind would just go blank and I didn't understand why. Now I understand spirit was coming in and trying to replace my thoughts with their thoughts.
Mm.
But I was like, wow, this is like next level um uh what do you call that? Anxiety that I
Sure.
thought I was experiencing, just this really intense anxiety. Um Eventually what ended up happening was I had a friend who shared with me about this experience she had where a medium came to her friend's house with all these girls, and the medium taught them how to do psychometry. Psychometry is when you can actually hold the object of that belonged to someone who passed on, right? Because objects hold memories, they hold energy. And so that is actually a great way to bring your loved one closer if you wanted to. If
Mm.
you have their ring or you had a necklace they wore all the time or their watch, and you just kind of hold it and you can kind of feel their energy and maybe have memories pop into your mind, just by doing that, which is a really beautiful thing. So, anyways, she told me about this, and it was like these sparks were going off inside of me. Like I knew this. Those inner knowings where you're like, I don't know how I
Mhm.
know this, but I just know this. And so I ended up trying it, and I just again, I knew what to do. I knew to pay attention to all of my senses. I could feel things, I could hear things in my mind, I could see things within my mind, like little images, little videos. And I just wrote it all down. And then it all ended up resonating with my grandma. It was actually her friend who had passed away that I connected to. Of course, being a human with
Mm.
what's the word? A skeptical, having a
Sure.
skeptical mind, which is very healthy, very normal as a human. I thought it was purely coincidence, but then I just kept practicing, and it just was so natural. It was like as if I had been doing it my whole life.
Yeah.
And so I just started practicing more and more, and then really realized like how incredible this connection was, and how much it was helping people. And there's actually there was a childhood friend who I grew up with. He passed sadly from suicide a few years before I realized my abilities. And he was the type of person who was loved by everyone. Everyone knew
Yeah.
his name. Everyone, admired him, and he was a really great person. And so he kind of came in a little bit as like a spirit guide at the time, and we worked together to bring healing to so many of his loved ones and friends.
Mm.
And it just completely changed the trajectory of my life, as well as just a lot of his loved ones who were so deep in grief at the time.
Yeah, it's so challenging.
So challenging, especially when it's so unexpected, and it just completely catches people off guard, right? And so, anyways, that's just kind of how things started for me. I started doing things word of mouth, and um,
Mhm.
again, I
When
just
you now, like, when you're thinking back, so now that you know, like, your mind goes blank and you've energetically kinda understand how the spirits come in, when you look backwards, do you see that you were getting that same sensation in the body your whole life? You just didn't really connect what it was?
absolutely. Like, once I realized what was happening, I was like, wow, there was so many times, even, after my husband's dad passed away, I remember this moment feeling my energy completely change, knowing
Mhm.
his dad was present while we were mid conversation. And I even said it out loud. Oh my God, like I can't even hear myself think like your dad is here right now. And him
Yeah.
being like, well, tell him to go away. Yeah, so there was, like, all these moments, even as a child, like, I didn't even
Mhm.
remember this until after. I'm like, "Wow," when I was a kid, I used to hear, like, spirits whisper in my ear. I would feel them. I would get poked in my arm. Like, I could remember feeling spirit around me growing up. So, yeah, I was able to connect so many dots about my life, and then from there, like I said, realized, "Wow, I am extremely intuitive and very
Mhm.
psychic," and just yeah, that's just kind of how it all happened. But you
Wow,
know,
that's awesome.
Yeah, thank
When
you.
I was wondering too, like, you know, what does it feel like if you could tell the listeners inside your body? So one of the modalities that we use at Wake Wellness is somatic practices. And so I'm really into embodied practices. And I think that a lot of healing and really our whole life story is inside our body first, in our brain. It gets a little jumbled, right? So the brain, as you said, is so skeptical because it wants to keep you safe. And I think connected with others and can be to be connected with others, we use the scrutiny brain, like, don't do don't tell people you might be psychic because they won't love you or they'll think you're
Right.
crazy. Like those
Yeah.
are the thoughts. But in your body, like what does it feel like when a spirit comes inside? Do you disconnect with the self or do you actually tap in deeper inside the body?
Oh, I love that question. That's so good. So for me personally, like every medium is so different. You might
Yeah.
hear mediums call themselves a clairvoyant or, they maybe just hone in on one certain thing. But for me, it's a whole body experience. So I'm actually tuning more deeply into my body. I could feel their physical body, like
Yeah. I was wondering.
overlapping mine,
Yeah.
blending with mine, so I'll feel the size difference. So I'll actually feel and I'll so not only will I feel it, I'll experience it. Let's say, they were really hunched over. My physical body's gonna start hunching over. Let's say they were
Mhm.
shrinking towards the end, when a lot of people lose weight as they're
Sure.
about to transition, my body will start to shrink physically. And so I'm just paying attention to every subtle impression within my physical body. I no longer connect it to my own. So if
Yeah.
I if my head starts hurting while I'm connecting to a loved one, I know it's not my own headache. It has to do with how they pass, what they experience before they pass. Same with any
Do
like
they
emotion.
generally do they generally bring, sorry for interrupting, the energy that they had at the very last moments of their life, or do you find that the energy comes, like, from the core essence of who they were as a human?
Ooh, so it's actually quite a journey that they'll take me on. So typically,
Mhm.
typically, they'll kind of show me what their journey was like prior to transitioning. So what they experienced leading up to their passing, but then they'll shift it to who they were at the core, like their
Yeah.
beautiful personality, memories. They'll even have me speak the way that they spoke, use certain mannerisms that they use, so that you can experience your loved one again and know that it's actually them. And that's why I call myself an evidential medium, because I want to bring forward evidence, things that there's no possible way I could have Googled or known previously. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's this whole body journey that I'm sharing with you, all of the thoughts that are popping into my head, all the emotions I'm feeling in my own heart, that they're having me feel. There's so much going on. So I'm still present, but I'm taking a back seat. You know what I
It's
mean?
really
Like,
it's really like the movie Ghost. Do you remember the movie
yeah,
Ghost?
yes, yes, yes.
It's a really
Like,
beautiful depiction, like, right when he, like, gets inside of the bodies, which is
yes,
cool.
like I'm still here and I'm not completely taken over by spirit. I'm not possessed. Like there's nothing like that happening. It's
Mhm.
this blending. Let's call
So
it a
you can
blend.
still feel yourself inside of it, like, you can still do you
Absolutely.
have any physiological responses? Do you notice, like, when the spirit comes in, your heart rate slows down or speeds
Whoa.
up?
Speeds up. I start
Yeah.
sweating like crazy.
Yes, that's so interesting.
Yeah, I start so basically what happens is spirit, our loved ones in spirit, they vibrate at such a fast rate energetically,
Huh.
okay? Their energy vibrates so, so, so fast. So when they're blending with our energy, your heart's going to start racing and it's going to feel like anxiety. I call it spirit anxiety. So when
Mm.
I was just starting out, and my energy had not adjusted to spirit energy yet. This is where I would feel like, oh my God, I'm gonna pass out. I'm gonna have a panic
Panic
attack because
attack?
right? But it wasn't anxiety, it was spirit energy that I was
Mm.
experiencing. And so I feel like a lot of people walk around with
Right, I'm like,
anxiety.
"How many panic attacks?"
Oh, I know, and they're actually experiencing energy of spirit, or they're also picking up from other people unknowingly because so many of us we're also highly sensitive and we don't even know it. But
Yeah.
it's just a matter of tapping into that. But yeah,
Okay, so if you had some recommendations for grievers out there, since you deal with a lot of grievers, obviously,
Yeah.
when grievers are looking, and you already gave kind of one beautiful technique, grabbing a linking object, which, to be fair, as a widow, both of my kids lost their dad.
Mm.
Let me think, the ages 8 and 5. So my youngest has very little, if any, memories of her dad, like connected memories, where my son has memories of him being very ill, and good memories too, but also like the further along we get, where they get foggy for him. And so I was just wondering, like, do you have any techniques that you offer to people to connect with this intuition, or how do we get a little bit more connected? Because people will often say, like, I just knew my loved one was there, like I could just feel them, or a lot of people will say butterflies or
Mhm.
flying around them all the time. My mother-in-law loves to say that she has this pair of cardinals that were in her one house. She moved to a completely different part of this estate, a completely different city. And again, this little two-pair cardinal family has like nested itself right in front of her condo now. And she was in a big house before with like a huge backyard. So it was like completely different nature scenes for these birds. So it's interesting. Like, how do you feel about all the signs and the symbols?
Oh, I feel like the signs and the symbols, the synchronicities are all just such a beautiful part of it, and
Hmm.
that's how you can just start connecting more and just knowing that they're around, and they'll do it in the most amazing ways. Like, our loved ones are constantly trying to communicate with us in so many different ways. It's just a matter of like starting to be open to them. Like, I've had, people say like, well, how come I never dream of them? Invite them into your dreams, invite them to come and visit you in your dreams.
I'd been seeing a grief therapist for a long time, and I credit it, literally, she like saved my life. But she was very East meets West. She had a really traditional background, John Hopkins trained, like very smart. Her name's Jan Cahoe. For anyone in the New Orleans area, she's an incredible grief therapist, and she had me do this exercise a lot. I remarried a widower, and often as the mother figure for David's three children, his wife died in a sudden passing, and I struggled a little bit with like not knowing her and trying to sit in this seat to be a mother figure and represent maybe someone who, not that I was representing her, but necessarily just holding space as a mother, and not knowing her was hard. And so she had me write letters to her with my right hand,
Mhm.
and then, as though, so write questions is in my right hand, and then whatever came to my brain using my left hand, those were the answers from Betsy. And it was super interesting, because I had a lot of guilt, at the time, just knowing death and knowing the walk. And when David and I first got engaged, and that she just didn't get the chance to mother in the way that I think, she would have wanted to. And it was really powerful, the left hand return responses from her. And I was wondering if you thought about that. Like, is it different centers of your brain, does it feel like, when you tap into the spiritual aspect of a person beyond this planet?
That's a really good question. So I've definitely heard of like automatic writing. I haven't heard of that particular exercise, but I've personally done automatic writing, and it's just kind of like I described. You're kind of taking a back seat, and you're letting that stream of consciousness just flow through you. You're not thinking about it, right? As soon as you start thinking about it in your head, you're blocking
Mhm.
that flow. So yeah, writing out letters, that's really beautiful, and just kind of allowing them to take the lead, as
Mm,
you're writing. So, yeah, that's definitely a great way to do it. And just also knowing and understanding that, like, your loved ones are a thought away. They can hear
mm,
us. You don't need a medium to communicate with your loved ones. Like, I'm here to be that vessel to be a voice for them, right? But there's, a lot of people will say, "Can you tell them I miss them? Can you tell them I love them?" And I'm like, "Oh my goodness." Like, they know that and they hear you. You can just tell them that you love them, tell them that you miss them, and they hear you. They really do. I've had signs come in so many different ways, just like from my own loved ones who I've lost, and one of them could be dimes, like when they leave dimes around. just when you find a dime in random places. I've also had loved ones, and just through readings, heard from clients say that they saw someone who looked exactly like them to a T. And I believe that's a sign too. It's like all these little
Mhm.
things that are like winks from your loved one, or you really needed a message from them, and you turn on the radio and the first song that plays is a song that they really loved, and it reminds you of them. That's from them too, right? Or just even that inner knowing of, wow, they're really with me right now, and I could
Mhm.
feel that. I could feel their comfort. Something that I tapped into, my grandmother, my mama, she was like my everything. She passed away just over a year ago this month.
Sorry.
And yeah, and actually, crazy thing that I want to add to that really quick. I just had my last round of radiation on Monday, right? And my sister pulled up a Facebook memory that was showing that my grandmother had her final round of radiation on the exact same date 5 years prior. Like, you cannot
Crazy.
make that up. So that to me was like, wow, that was like a wink from my grandma that she was with me in that
Mhm.
moment.
I had no idea in doing research. Obviously, we don't always talk about the private battles of our life when we're prepping for these kind of shows, but you've been battling. Did they call it head and neck cancer?
Um, I mean, I did the head and neck radiation. I don't know if you would necessarily call it head and neck cancer, but yeah, I had like a rare form of secretory carcinoma. It started within the gland of my eyelid.
Mm-hmm.
It's normally something you would find in the gland of your breast, but for some reason it was in my eyelid, and then eventually it made its way to my parotid gland. Yeah.
Well, so Natasha has been on quite a battle, right? Like you've been just finished 30 rounds of radiation. You've had multiple surgeries on your eye. So I'm so grateful that you're here today. And I really want to witness and tell you, welcome back, to the newest version of you. What I think I've captured from the cancer journey, as just a caregiver, right? Not even embodied in it, is that your whole life changes in that journey. And when you start it, you think it's going to be this, like, I'm going to fight this, I'm going to get over this, I'm going to hurry up and get to the end of this, I got this. But really, the transitions that happen in the interim of the treatments is transformative, and it really does, if you allow it, change you as a person as a whole, because you start to value movement. You're swallowing, the simplest things that we take for granted every day. And your story, even when you said, yeah, I felt like I was swallowing razor blades, I'm like, that brought me back very much to Carl's journey, where, hot and cold you can't drink. There's just the simplest things that we just take for granted that you really now are like, I will never take eating for granted, or swallowing, or speaking, or so many things. So yeah, I see you. And what a journey you've been on, huh?
Yeah, it's been wild. And I've had, like, even though I just completed, I feel like I've had a lot of time to reflect. Like, you're saying the things that you learn, the things you realize you've taken for granted, like tasting food. I miss tasting food. Like,
I
I have
know.
some of my taste buds, but not all. But honestly, the most amazing experience was being part of the cancer center community family.
Powerful.
It's so insane how strangers can come together and support one another, and, like, you don't know each other, but you know each other's faces, and you ask each other how you're doing. And, it's so wild, the healing that you can experience from opening your heart to community, and just people seeing you, and caring about you, and allowing a whole team, right? I had a whole team of people, like nurses and, doctors and everything, taking care of me that whole time. And if that's something you've struggled with before, like letting people see you, letting people take care of you, things like that, it's so healing. It's very humbling, and it's changed me forever, for sure.
It's really powerful. And then just those people stay in your heart for forever. Even if it's sometimes, because I lost my husband to cancer, I definitely had a refractory period where it was challenging to
Mm,
get back in the hospital system. but I still connect with, the DMPs, our oncologists. Even like we had this really specialized oncologist at MD Anderson who's world renowned, and he will shoot me a text every once in a while, just like checking on the kids and I, and it's a human experience where potentially so much vulnerability is on the table at all points, because you're so raw that maybe that in all relationships is how we hope to be able to be safe enough to be seen. It's like, this is the real me. This is the uncloaked me. This is me at my rawest, at my weakest, at my bloodiest, at my worst and most vulnerable space. You're seeing me. And when you get seen like that, I think love connects with that for some reason, because it's just it requires so much vulnerability and trust. And so, yeah, it's a special experience, and it's not something you ever wish upon anyone, but I'm so glad that you're doing okay and that you're on the healing path. And yeah, I bet it's just going to make your mediumship even more connected, because I do think cancer is a really tough journey, and it takes it at least it felt like to me it was robbing Carl of his faculties, and so his tumor was really big, and it just was like eating him alive from the inside out. And he was a really famous chef and loved food and family, and interestingly enough, he had stomach and esophageal cancer, so eating became like the battle throughout the journey. And eventually he got put on a feeding tube at the end of his life. So it's interesting, like, it's funny how cancer can sometimes really be like tearing apart the part of you that you identify with. Although I think more than anyone, or far more than our job, right? Or our passion. So it's interesting.
Absolutely. I really feel like um, this whole journey, like, not only did it bring me back to earth more and appreciate everything that earth has to offer, and just like the things that we take for granted, right, on a regular basis. But I also feel like it's supporting my mediumship as well, because
Sure.
I feel like I'm going to be able to serve and support people on a whole other level, because I've personally experienced just like this crazy time with cancer. And I don't know, I feel like it's just deepened my compassion, it's deepened my empathy, it's deepened my ability to hold space for others who are going through just going through it, like, just, you know what I mean?
It's really hard. I think when you get close to death, it really is one of the greatest teachers, and I think it's interesting that the Western world, we're terrible at death. We're just really bad at it, and we don't want to be near it. We don't want to anyone who's even close to it, we just push away. And the truth is, we can't escape that we're going to die. Every one of our loved ones will have a point where they're going to die. And it's just interesting to me. But I think if you allow yourself to get close to it, it really becomes the greatest teacher and teaches you how to live, which is funny. Like, right? Everything's always this duality when you're dealing with life and want to stay connected. Well, I was wondering, I mean, I guess as a griever, I came in with like a subset of a ton of questions. And I just think, like, as a griever, I have so many questions, because I think I want to ask the questions that I think the grievers would ask, which is like, one of the things I always pondered was at the end of Carl's life. And I think a lot of people deal with this. He had a lot of pain just due to his cancer. It was a really rough area. And he stopped speaking. It was like a light switch. Like one day he was celebrating a birthday and we did a family party, and the next day, like, never spoke again, and screaming in pain. And he had pain the whole time. So that was, it just elevated. And that was a tough part of his cancer. But I had a lot of people, a Reiki specialist, who really like gave me this piece of wisdom that I felt like calmed me down a decent amount. And then another person sent me a book that was oddly enough about a medium who had been I don't know if she called herself a medium. I think she said clairvoyant, but these spirits she saw spirits since she was a very young child. And both people simultaneously, the book and this Reiki specialist, had said at the end of life that our loved ones come down and hover over the person as they transition out of their body. And that the loved one transitions out of their body and stays hovering until the services, or whatever your parting ritual might be. For us, it was funeral. And it does. It feels like energetically you kind of somehow stay moving forward and keep planning, and we put together like obviously a very large funeral. And I connected with that, thinking like, how beautiful would that be to have all your loved ones holding space for you and transitioning you to wherever we go, and that you're there watching. Because as the griever and a young griever, right? When your loved one dies unexpectedly in a deep amount of pain and screaming in pain, and you just like struggling to get them to safety. I closed our house down. He didn't want his friends to come see him. He made that very clear before he lost his ability to speak. And I felt like I was like having to push people out that really probably wanted to say goodbye, but in order to protect his wishes. And then also I was fighting very hard to keep my kids safe and keep him in control. It can be really rough at the ending. Do
Yeah.
you find that you like get a sense about it, since you are able to touch with so many spirits, that they're not in the same energetic realm that we're feeling here on earth, that they're like, even though we're seeing this one thing go on, have you connected with like the fact that they were safe the whole time? It's just us in the hell. I'm not sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a few ways that there's a few things I want to touch on when it comes to this, but I know firsthand being a medium, and just connecting with so many loved ones in spirit over time that as they're transitioning, they are being welcomed by loved ones
Mhm.
on the other side. They're there. And you hear so many accounts of this too of like, yeah, they said they could see their sister, they said they could see their
Yeah.
mom, even though we can't see that. And they are transitioning to a space of like just pure peace and love, and all that pain is vanished. All that pain is completely vanished. So even when I am describing what your loved one went through as they're transitioning, it doesn't mean that they're still experiencing that. They're just taking me on a journey. They're taking me down memory lane so that you can connect the dots. But they're no
Yeah.
longer experiencing any of that. And I will, so circling back to my grandma, I was actually there in her final moments. I was there as she was transitioning over to the other side. And as a medium and as a granddaughter, it was so like what an honor to be there with her in those moments when she was experiencing an incredible amount of pain, like seeing her in that moment, and then all of a sudden seeing how she was seeing my papa, her husband who had already
Mm.
passed on. She was seeing him, and she started speaking French. She only spoke French with him, so I knew, oh, he's papa's here. And you could just see her just slowly, slowly, like peacefully passing. And but then it wasn't until the next morning where, like, so her soul had already left. She was still around. We could feel her, but her physical body didn't stop taking its breath until that morning.
Yeah.
And we all gathered around her and we sang her songs and we
Mm.
prayed. And it was just one of the most beautiful things. And then she finally, took her last breath. And I know she was there in that moment. I could feel it as a medium that she was there the whole time. The whole time
Yeah.
everyone was going to say goodbye to her body, things like that. So I don't feel like I'm properly answering your question, but
No, that's beautiful.
I hope that I'm just able to provide some relief to some of your listeners who may be wondering, like, is my loved one still suffering on the other side? Are they okay? Like, those are the most commonly asked questions. Like,
Yeah, I figured.
you like, right, we're kind of, as humans, still experiencing this duality and this intensity, right, that they're not experiencing. We still are holding on to what we witnessed them go through.
Right.
We still carry that inside of ourselves, and it's so human of us to wonder, like, oh my god, like I just hope that they're not still feeling that. and
Yeah.
and they're absolutely not. And they're free and they're at peace, and that's such a beautiful thing. And
Yes.
the greatest gift we could give them is to also free ourselves from any guilt we're carrying
Mhm.
around their passing, around what they experience, because they're not carrying that anymore and they don't want us to carry it either. They want us to feel that sense of peace that, like, okay,
Yeah,
they're
it's
okay now.
really amazing, and I think, I fight pretty hard in this company I'm also often, widows and widowers will come to me about me choosing love again. And it was something Carl and I talked about a lot because he was sick a lot of our marriage. We were married for 9 years and he battled for cancer it was 5.5 years of cancer. And we had 2 young babies when he was diagnosed. And just a lot of our life was fighting.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, and you kind of know now because you just walk that path. It's really hard to live and fight at the same time, right? Because you've got a lot in your head and a lot to manage. I don't know. I was just really wondering, like, what do you think about people who are young and are widow or widowers falling in love again? And what would the spirit say? Like, do they want you to live again? Do they? Because it's interesting. You're saying like they're with you all the time. I'm like being remarried again, and I just had another baby. It's been an interesting. I know in my heart that Carl would be happy for and wanted me to love again. But I think a lot of people really suffer, and there is a lot of guilt that comes in the beginning of it. Society
So
doesn't help.
absolutely. Yeah, I know. And it's sad because there's people on one hand who are like, "Oh, like no, they'd want you to be happy, like, go for it." And
Hmm.
then there's other people like, "How could you do that?" Right? You're hearing it from
People can
so
be
many
mean.
different angles. People can be so mean. But I've heard it time and time again that our loved ones truly want to see us thrive. They want to see us happy, and they are still we will always be bonded through love. That will never die. That connection with your loved one will never ever die. There's no replacing them.
Yeah.
There's none of that. There's no like just forgetting about them either. And they have, come through time and time again and shared that they want you to move on and to live. And they love to see it. They love to see you living. You're doing what they cannot do.
Right. That's
They're
literally kind of what I always base this company on, which is like, I would like to teach people to live because life is so fragile. And I feel like that's the best way that we can honor our loved ones who had their life, cut short and, it was their soul's journey and obviously their time to go. But in the human experience, it's really challenging to witness painful exits at a young age where they didn't get to play out, this human life. But I imagine on the other side of things, not necessarily attached to a certain faith, but I am very spiritual that they're at peace and that realm has to be hopefully is a better space than here in this brain of ours that is challenging.
Oh, yeah, they're not holding grudges, they're not mad at you for moving on, they're not experiencing those heavy, denser emotions that we
Hmm.
experience here. That's the part of the gift of being human is we get to experience this full spectrum of emotions, but they're not looking down on you like, "How could you, date him?" or whatever. They're not doing that. And so just some of the people that I've worked with, what I've noticed is that, like, because 'cause they're very young, like, I know of several very young widowers who lost their partners
Yeah.
tragically to illness or even accidents or whatever, and they're still keeping the memory of their loved one alive, like, included in their relationship, like, in their new relationship, like, that means finding a partner who's gonna be okay with you still sharing stories about them, and thinking of them on the day of their passing, including them in things like that. It's,
Yeah.
there's gonna take some tweaking, of course, and it's gonna take a special partner to come in and understand that someone else was there first,
Right.
and they're always gonna be a part of your life.
It is challenging. It's very challenging. I feel very blessed in the fact that David's a widower. I think in that way we both connect on the understanding that we had partnership prior to this. And I was kind of interested to talk a little bit about forgiveness and its power. I know that you often will post on social media and different avenues about forgiveness. One of the more difficult things that I notice interviewing grievers and speaking with grievers is we don't always end, life ends and sometimes people's soul journey ends quickly, unexpectedly. And you already talked about suicide. There can be many, many challenges in death that's unexpected. and your relationship with the person that you love may not actually be in a great space. What if, I often think sometimes, my own husband, he and his wife were in a little bit of, a normal, or maybe not normal, if I'm being honest, marital strife when she passed. And so there's just like you are left with all this unresolved. Will you talk a little bit to the listeners about forgiveness? So if you're out there and you had a passing of someone close to you that maybe you weren't in a great relationship with, maybe you can't even say loved one, maybe it just was so challenging, but you're still so bereft and full of grief. How do you suggest that we work on forgiveness? And yeah, maybe you can shine some light on what that spirit might have felt in the passing, or what the griever on earth should be working on.
Absolutely. I think this is such an important topic because honestly, even just for some people, they hear the word forgiveness and they're like, ugh. Like they're immediately feeling resistance, like, ew, like, no, never. So it's a really important thing to talk about because, so just a quick, like, nerdy thing here from an energetic standpoint. Spirit has showed me how, when we don't forgive, what it does to our energy field
Hmm.
and how it literally creates knots in the flow
Mm.
of your life force energy flowing through you. So it really does affect you energetically when you hold on to these things, right? And as we know, oftentimes when we're carrying things like that, it could turn into disease, it could turn into illness or, things like that, just not feeling like your full self. So there's that part of forgiveness that it
Yeah.
will literally change the flow of your life force energy and your energy as a whole when you do this. But anyways, forgiveness is not about anyone else but you. Forgiveness is for you, right? When
Mhm.
you forgive, you are freeing yourself from what you are carrying inside. As I mentioned before, our loved ones in spirit are not carrying, they're not still mad, right? A lot of people are like, "Oh, I wonder if they're still mad at me. I never got to say I'm sorry." It's not too late. You can still say I'm sorry. You can still tell them what you need to say and know that it will have an effect on them too, because they're still healing on the other side as well. They're still
Mm.
they're growing, they're evolving, they're seeing life through different lens from, no longer from a human perspective, but from a soul's perspective. And you can still write that letter to them. You could still get that off your chest. You can say what you need to say, and know that they're going to receive that. And again, it's not about what they have to do. It's not about you needing to be forgiven by them. It's you need to forgive yourself. And
Mhm.
also, if it is a matter of you needing to forgive them, you can still do that even if they're not here, because there will still be some sort of energetic shift from that, and you will truly benefit from it. And
Is there a way that you think is the most connected to the spirit to forgive them? Was it more like speaking in the mind, writing? What
mm,
way do you think is the best way to connect with our spirits?
I think the most important part here is intention, right?
Hmm.
Intention is so powerful. Even just creating a sacred space, which could literally be like, okay, I'm setting aside this hour or this 30 minutes, and I'm going to use this time to just really be with myself, to call forward my loved one, and to, okay, let's say, write it out. I'm going to write out everything that I need to say, with the intention that as I'm writing this out, I'm releasing it, I'm letting it go. That's so powerful. So,
Mhm.
so powerful. And it is, I don't want to say it's like easy, obviously it's hard, it's going to be hard to do that, and to experience that, but I'm just saying it's as simple as that. Like, you don't have to jump through hoops or light 500 candles or pay someone, or you know what I mean. It's like, you have everything you need to do this, and know that if you don't feel like you can voice it out loud, they will hear you in your mind too. So
Hmm.
it's just, connect to your heart, like, place your hand on your heart, have that intention of, I'm speaking to this loved one, I'm sharing these words, I'm putting this out there, and as I'm putting it out there, I'm letting it go. I'm releasing it. And
Yeah.
it's as simple as that. It really is.
When I was wondering as a mom, it's been very challenging with my young children, as they're growing older, they regrieve in the developmental stages and my daughter's 11 and she this week got very teary about so April Fool's Day was the day that my first husband was diagnosed with cancer. And I don't
Mm.
know why, but that day is always hard for me. It's harder than maybe even the anniversary of his death. I think because I felt like everything in our life really shifted from that moment. It was really traumatic the way we found out. Um, and everything moved really quickly after that, as you already know, because you're a cancer survivor. So
Yeah,
um, she was asking me questions about like, well, where do you think dad is? Do you think he's in heaven? Like those kind of normal questions. And I was wondering if you had some advice for parents who've lost or even like caregivers who are raising children who've lost a parent or parents on how to help them when they don't necessarily have the intuition. I'm sure they actually do have the intuition. I don't think they have the intentionality or the understanding of these concepts like forgiveness yet, per se. How would you suggest maybe children? Are they more connected just naturally because of the less blockage?
absolutely. Our children are, I say, the closest things to heaven. So up until they're about 4, they're so fresh from the other side, from the spirit world. Like our loved ones in spirit actually get to spend time with our babies before they come earthside, just so you
Hmm.
know. So they will actually get to know them. And that's why a lot you hear of children knowing their grandpa or already having a connection with their loved one that they never met before, but it's because they literally met on the other side. But children are so intuitive, they're so open, and so they really are like very connected, very highly sensitive. They're little messengers too. Kids are known for delivering messages from loved ones. I experienced it firsthand many
Hmm.
times, which is with my own children. It's been very beautiful. But anyways, I would say that I think it's, important for to still, like, be open about the loved one, right? To
Hmm.
still share stories and memories and things like that, and letting them know that they are in heaven, and, um, that's where everyone goes when they pass, but they're still around. Like, we can't see them, but we could feel them, and they're still there if we talk to them or if we think about them. They visit us in our dreams, you know. If we ask them, like if we're feeling scared, we can ask for them and they'll help us feel safe,
Mm.
like little things like that. I think it's important for them to know that they're not far out of reach. Um,
Yeah.
and like, those times where you just think of him randomly, that's that's
Hmm.
that's him coming close to you. That's how he's letting you know that he's actually close to you. He's not missing out on school plays and things like that. Yes, physically, of course, but um she could,
Yeah.
even
That's
working.
a common question of grievers, or at least parents who've lost a partner would say, like, I experience certain moments of overwhelm when my children do something like graduate or a play for sure. My daughter horse riding and sometimes singing, I'll just be overwhelmed with like, I wonder what her dad would say if he could see her now, and if you have a crisis or question of faith, which I think most of us do,
Oh, yeah.
at some point, right? Like you're not sure. There's no factual information on the other side. And even I was thinking like people who are atheistic, like, do you have recommendations for people who don't have strong faith that there is something beyond this planet? Like, how can they, connect with their loved ones? Or is it possible do we close ourselves off? I guess is the real question if we don't keep open to the possibility of this afterlife.
I feel like even atheists, like, not that I'm super familiar with, like, I guess what technically, like, I guess they don't. Yeah, I can't really speak on it because, um, it's just not something I'm very familiar with, but I
Well, that
know.
seems like it would be very far away from what you're doing,
Yeah,
your
I
whole
know, I
energy.
know, I know, but I would say that even if there's, a mustard seed amount of curiosity, that they too have the ability to be open to a connection with their loved one, even if like they don't have to make it mean anything. They don't have to make it mean that there is a higher power or that there is, our loved ones do go somewhere else, whatever. But if they could just look at it from a scientific level of energy doesn't die. Their loved one's
Mhm.
spirit is still lingering around them and they can still experience them in that way. So, like I said, you know, like if they could just be the teeniest amount of open to experiencing a connection with their loved one, they can still have that.
Well, it's so profound. Is there anything so talk to us a little bit about, like, how people can find you. I feel like, you have such a beautiful energy, and I don't know, it's just wonderful to have the opportunity for those people who and maybe it is a little bit more for us to have you tell us, like, they're okay. Like, we just you almost need that, Like, even in,
Oh,
my talk now, I feel better. I always believe in signs, and I believed interestingly enough, I had like a numerology synchronicity, like where Carl died 9/9/19 at 9 p.m. while Drew Brees, who's number 9, his favorite Saints player, was giving a post game conference.
ooh,
And both my children were born on the 9th. Like my daughter, in fact, rolled in at 12 a.m. on the 9th. Like, really, we should have probably delivered on the 8th. And my doctor was even like kind of racing to get there, delayed in traffic. And I held on to get her. And then, boom, midnight, she was born. And my now daughter, so I tattooed number 9 on my wrist because 9 was just everywhere. It was just everywhere. And
mhm,
I looked up St. Paul's spiritual gifts. There's 9 of them. And it really did kind of like sound a lot like Carl. And in the beginning of it, right after his death, it really connected me. Oddly enough, I almost delivered Genevieve, my newest child, with David, on the 9th, and I held off, and I had an emergency C-section, kind of a rough delivery, and she was born on 9/11. Which, interestingly enough, when I flip my tattoo upside down, it's an 11. When I'm looking at it, it's a 9. When the world is looking at it, it's an 11. And I just thought that was so interesting.
wow.
Yeah,
That's really
yeah.
powerful.
I know. Crazy. So
Very.
there's just it's interesting, like, I feel those signs are valuable. You can talk yourself in the logical brain like, "Oh, you're this is, it is just time. Is time even real?" Like all these things, but yeah, I don't know. I do always feel like I connect with the spiritual life. Now, I haven't been a big dreamer. I've never had a dream about Carl ever one time, not
Okay.
one time. Not that I'm not open to, but I never have. And people always call me and text me when they get dreams. Like, I mean, people, all kinds of friends will be like, I had this dream and blah, blah, blah. And he said this. And my son and I both know dreams. My daughter, when she was 5, right after had dream after dream after dream. We were like, what the hell? So, it is interesting. I don't know. I definitely feel this has been a really beautiful talk, and it does make you feel a sense of peace to know that they're okay, especially in a lot of suffering. And there was a lot of suffering in our home, and and on us, it has been hard to grieve that and to process it and to make sense of the world and why good people have really hard things happen to them and why young people are taken early. It's hard.
Absolutely. It's so wild because what I couldn't remember earlier just circled back
Mhm.
in this moment, and I feel like I really need to share it. It's so wild how that
Yeah.
happens, but so what I was trying to say earlier was what I learned is that when I feel the most intense waves of grief, where it just consumes you out of nowhere and
Mhm.
you have those tears just it's all that love with nowhere to go, right?
Mhm.
Those are the moments when they are right there with you. Those
Mm.
waves of grief and love that are just they just hit you so hard. Don't fight it. Feel it. And acknowledge them. Be like, "Wow, I know you're with me in this moment. Thank you. I feel you. I feel the love." And I know that sometimes it could feel so intense that it almost physically hurts, right? When that wave hits you, but just imagine they're holding you so close and you're feeling them the strongest. That's why it feels so intense. So even you could share that with your kids when they have that wave of
I
grief.
know
You're
that's what made me get teary. I'm
like,
like,
yeah,
I'm
when
thinking of
they,
my kids, and they just grieve
yeah,
so hard. My
yeah,
my oldest has grieved so hard, and it has been
yeah,
really the world is not they don't take it easy on grieving children. They don't allow a
no,
lot of space for this, and he loved his dad so much, and just,
yeah,
you wish that they didn't have to carry this pain,
I
and
know.
it is it is hard to be a boy that's 9 years old that lost your dad and is grieving so hard, and, the world's not really prepared for that. So,
No,
that's a really beautiful thing that you're saying because it just made me tap into, like, yeah, my kids are and I have grieved, and we're still grieving. We'll grieve every day for the
yeah,
rest of our life as does David and
absolutely.
his children, and then I'm in a house full of grievers all the time, and it's just interesting to think about. I am really emphatic about letting the grief out and feeling it
Yes.
more, I think, for an energy perspective that I know if you hold it in, it's not good, but I've never thought about the fact that when you're at your most raw and vulnerable and that succumb, or I call it a shattering, that, your loved ones are with you in that moment. That's
Oh.
really beautiful. And I just could not have ended that podcast in a better way. So thank you so much for everything. And everyone who's listening, obviously, Natasha is going to be available, for do you call them sessions? What do you call them?
Yeah, I like to call them sessions because it's like, yes, it's a reading, but it's so much more than that. It's such an experience. Like the
Yeah.
whole time you're experiencing it, you're experiencing your loved ones. And it's
Mm.
just such a beautiful thing. And I would actually like to add to that that something I do, I haven't been doing it very much just because of, the journey I've been through, but what I would like to get back to again is I do mediumship demonstrations on my Facebook.
Cool.
So for people who are curious, who, they've never really experienced it before, they kind of want to know how it works, what it looks like. I'll go live and I'll have random loved ones in spirit come forward who are connected to those who are watching, and I'll deliver I'll do readings on there for free, like just so that I that's like my way of giving back to my community, but also just giving people the opportunity to experience it right before, because we are skeptical. That's normal. I
Sure.
don't take that personally. And just so you can kind of get a feel for it yourself, because a lot of people also have like fear around this, right? Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
fear around because of scary movies and things like that, or
Yeah.
just the unknown. But yeah, so I'm definitely available for private sessions, as well as
That's amazing. And I
yeah.
think I saw on your website that, you're doing one of these lives in May. Is that correct? Is that what that was? It looks like a May. There's something coming up in May that you're hosting.
Oh, so in May, I am doing a workshop.
Okay,
It's
cool.
yeah, so that's like an intuition workshop. It's like how to know if like is it your anxiety or is it intuition? That's what it's
Right.
called. But if there's enough interest, it's something I plan on doing online, like virtually as well, because I know there's a lot of virtual people who are like, "Oh my god, I need this. Why are you doing it in
Right.
person?" Yeah.
Right.
So I
Well, and
do a
so
lot of
many people are, I think are really big empaths with a lot of intuition. And I think I definitely am an empathic person. I have a ton of intuition. I almost have to protect my energy because I am such a big feeler. And I feel like
yes.
often I have to recoup rest and really get myself regulated a lot because I feel a lot of things. And so yeah, we deep feelers need you. We need some
Yeah.
coaches in this world.
Absolutely. I actually just it's so weird. The other thing that I have coming that I just put together is like literally like for beginners survival guide, like how to just start tapping into your intuition,
Awesome.
and just like support yourself as a highly sensitive person. So that's coming too. So all those things will be updated on my website, on my Instagram, or whatever. But I have a little something for everyone, you know?
Amazing. No, it's amazing. And I'm so excited for everyone to have the opportunity to work with you, myself included. So we will get everything you guys need. Just check the show notes. There'll be links to all of the services Natasha is offering and ways to connect with her and to tap into your intuition. Survival guide is needed for all of us. And so I hope today everyone got as much as I did from this conversation. It is really powerful to think about connecting with your spirits in the everyday. So I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone is able to utilize your services. It's been very healing conversation for me.
Thank you so much for having
Thank
me. I
you.
appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this episode of Wake the F Up, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join the Wake community by downloading our app. Just search for The Wake Wellness in the Apple or Android App Store. And follow us on Instagram at The Wake Wellness. Thanks for listening.